Illusion by William E. Barrett. Doubleday and Company Inc. Garden City, New York. Contents: Book 1, The Painting. For Lois and Matilda, James and Annie, Vincent and Charlene, Albert and Juanita, Edward and Sonia. Book 1, The Painting. Chapter 1. There was no reason why I should not be a painter of note, one of those riding high and comfortably on the wave of public interest in art and artists. I was 29 and I had done my time in Europe, and I knew what to do with brushes and paint and canvas. My disqualification and the grace to glory and the rich rewards were of my own creation, of my own temperament. I did not paint abstractions or the essence of anything, nor landscapes nor portraits. I painted heads and faces. I painted the kind of faces that surrounded the entrance of old cathedrals or that look at one from beneath the pulpits inside the cathedrals. Strong faces, and for the most part, masculine faces. One does not become a famous artist with an obsession like that, but one is shackled to one's obsession. I was doing the sketch of a head from memory when the phone rang. The head of a man who sold vegetables a few blocks from my studio. It was head and face that belonged in another century and in another place. I did not care which century or which place. The phone rang. Ungently and reluctantly I answered it. The voice of the Ludwig Lyricson came over the wire to me. Kirk, he said, is it the convenience for you to come to the studio the next half hour? I have something to show you. There will be a few other people. I'll come, certainly, I said. Ludwig Lawrenson always disconcerted me, always made me awkward in speech and in response. Ludwig Lawrenson is a dealer in abstractions. The thought does not immediately occur to one because the Lawrenson galleries are not a castle in Spain. They are an institution of solid value, housed in a substantial building which was designed to contain, to protect, and to exhibit objects of tangible reality. Traffic was heavy, and the cab consumed a half hour. As I crossed the sidewalk toward the main entrance, I narrowly missed a collision with Rabbi Gerson Marlar, who was making an angry exit. He looked at me if he saw me. He did not recognize me. The lines and wrinkles in his face were set in cement, and he walked away from the Lawrensons with a swift, jerky stride. I had known him for several years. He had a great capacity for indignation, a vast amount of impatience under the normally placid surface of gentle, scholarly good nature, but the explosive quality was a dramatic outlook and not bad temper. Drama was integral to his personality. I had seen him angry on other occasions, but never blind angry. Ludwig Lawrence too had been out of the norm. I had been present one fall day at an auction where Ludwig Lawrence had bid the highest price ever paid for a painting in the United States, and his voice had been as perfectly controlled as if he were ordering lunch. Today he had been excited or disturbed. There had been emotion in his voice. The interior of the Lawrenson galleries was austere and serene, entirely normal, with no marks of articulation or angry passage. Robert, the elderly colored man who operated the elevator, with his usual smile of welcome as he greeted me. For customers or clients of Ludwig Lawrenson, there were only 3 floors to the gallery. For certain friends of Ludwig's, there were 4. Conversations with Robert were necessarily short. A serial story always continued in the next installment. How's the new chauffeur making out, Robert? I asked. Badly, Mr. Donner. He shook his head. That man's lazy. Dust all over the Cadillacs every morning. That's why I hear everywhere. People don't take their work seriously anymore. You'll have to fire him. I've been considering it. That's a bad decision. We have talked in that vein for several years. Straight face and without levity. It was Mr. Roberts' own legend, and he had taught me to play to it. He had a spinal injury of pressing buttons, but he brought dignity to the task and gave it stature. He knew how to meet the people who came to the Lawrence and the mighty, the almost mighty, and the perpetuous. With fourth floor visionaries, he relaxed. I had heard many times of his problems with his yachts and his Cadillacs and his investment in Wall Street. Aiken Dots told the amazing twist and with flashes of irony, but of his actual problems and realities of his life. The trouble that he must have had and the pain I knew nothing. A dusty Cadillac is amusing and trouble is not. It was part of his wisdom to understand that. The year that his name, I painted a portrait of him from memory and seated him behind the wheel of an old Maxwell automobile. The painting was a Christmas gift. I made a gift to myself in the giving of it. It made me one of Robert's special people. The elevator door opened Ludwig's study, a dark panel Florentine room of many books, but with only one painting. The painting, however, was a luxury and extravagance. The portrait of the attractive scoundrel by Antonio di Messina. Ludwig was waiting for me, not engrossed in work at his desk nor at ease with a book, but arrested in the act of room pacing. Ah, Kirk, he said, it was good of you to come on such a short notice. I'm glad that you're here before the others. Did you see Rabbi Marler? I did not. He didn't see me. I did. He didn't see me. He was upset. Come, I have something remarkable to show you. Ludwig opened a door on his right and led the way with speed, if not grace, down a long passage, a slender soul, a fastidious spirit propelling any uncouth, oddly made, awkward body with which it was burdened. He snapped a light switch in the large, monotistically severe room that I knew well, the room in which he exhibited certain pictures to carefully select people. He took a half dozen steps in turn so that he could watch any face. I was aware of him for the moment, then no longer aware of him. The cleverly contrived lightning suspended a large canvas in space, so there seemed to be no other life or being or inanimate thing. In the room with it, it was an old canvas with the vertical streaks, like bars of faded soot, near the edges of either side. It had been cleaned, but not recently. There were a number of cobweb cracks in the paint, and some flaking where the paint had been built up to develop shadow. The central area was like damaged, lightly filmed with grime and dust since the cleaning. The painting had been spared long exposure to sunlight or destructive smoke of votive candles, so that it was remarkably preserved. All this was a momentary impression, mental comment, mood, and dismiss. I stood in practically non-existent room and looked into the courtyard of Pointinus Pilate's palace some 2,000 old odd years ago. People Pilate had washed his hands, and the Roman soldiers were taking Jesus through the courtyard where they would presently load upon his shoulders the cross upon which he was to die. First, however, they must reckon with the mob, men, women, and children, wealthy and poor, blocked the way, howling their hatred at the day's man who stood within a circle of Roman solidarity. A magnificent soldier was pressing against them with the buckler on his left arm, the muscles of his legs and arms rigid. Jesus Christ, in white robes stained with blood, stood with his legs well apart, standing upward with obvious effort. He had been heavily punished, and the marks of his punishment were on him. There was blood in his hair, running down over his forehead, and his mouth was cut. His shoulder was hunched slightly forward as through he sought to draw his lash back away from contact with his robe. He was looking into the faces before him, and it was difficult to read the expression. He seemed dazed, but his eyes were alive. They did not mirror fear, nor hatred, resentment, or surprise. They were perhaps merely asking a question. I drew a deep breath, reminding myself that this was merely a painting, that its compelling sense of reality was due in great part to Lunwick's superb staging. Magnificent, I said, an amazing find. Whose is it? Lungwood's voice out of the shadows was slightly hoarse, edged with impatience. No, no. The artist does not matter. He was a nobody. You never heard of him? Impossible. The man who painted that was unknown. Who could it be? I was looking at the painting now with my other pair of eyes, no longer aware of the human drama. The man at bay, aware only of how the miracle of illusion had been wrought on canvas. The man was unquench- unquestionably, unquestionably German, but it suggested Tintoretto or its Port Ratcher Caravaggio. Who else but Tintoretto would have had the daring to place a minor figure of the drama so commandingly in the foreground as what the thrusting Roman? It was the same Dorian that had placed a superb full-bodied woman on the foreground steps while the tiny figure of the Virgin climbed at right angles to her in his great presentation. You're not observing the details, Ludwig said. Was I not? The angry crowd formed a semicircle at the lower left, balanced by an arc of dark. Tumbling cloud, a low hill, and pilot's balcony on the upper right, with the solitary figure of Christ in the exact center. The distinct distinct this diagonal, but not seeming to be the mass human figure shortened the foreground, while placing of the balcony and the hill on either side behind the central figure gave perspective to the clouds, creating the impression of deep space. It was mid morning after a night feebly into the painting from behind the beholder. Its greatest strength, whether its illusion minded resting wanly at least against the marble pillar beneath the balcony and the rough stone of the wall. Look at the people, Ludwig said. One does not see all the great painting at a glance, nor in a few moments. One progresses from general to the particular according to one of temperaments and one's interests. I'm not ready for the mob, but I gave them my attention when Ludwig demanded it. There were people whipped to a fury of hatred and denunciation. There was a movement in them and tension. They showed that and brandished fists, swore no doubt, and reached for the bits of jagged stone where the pavement and cracked under the hooves of horses. The Renaissance painters did their own people and set them down in the hole in Egypt, ancient Greece, or in whatever their imagination led them. This artist has been a German. This the artists of that school were portrait painters, or all of the good ones were their masses or groups. Always resolve themselves into sharply defined individuals. When you can study them, I study the mob now. Fewer people actually than there appeared to be.